Surviving the end. In the end, survival isn't about the supplies you hoard, it's about the people you choose to trust. Prologue: the end. The taste of blood filled my mouth as I lay crumpled on the cold hardwood floor, every breath sending fresh waves of agony through my broken ribs. 2 days without food. 2 days of drinking nothing but tap water when they remembered to give me any at all. My vision swam at the edges, darkness creeping in, but I could still see them clearly enough. The 5 people who had destroyed my life gathered in a cozy circle around that grotesquely swollen belly like it was the 8th wonder of the world. It wasn't until the world literally ended that I finally discovered the truth I'd been too blind to see. I'd been conned into marriage. Deceived. Manipulated. Used. My husband, Derek Stratton, and I had been married for exactly 6 months. His mistress, Lily Morgan, was 8 months pregnant. The math was devastatingly simple. The betrayal was complete. "Come on, Vivienne," Lily said now, her voice dripping with fake sweetness as she placed one delicate, manicured hand on her enormous stomach. The diamond bracelet, my diamond bracelet that had mysteriously gone missing 3 months ago, glittered on her wrist. "You need to understand the situation. You need to eat a little less. Resources are really scarce now with the zombies and everything, and I'm pregnant. I absolutely cannot let the baby go hungry. You understand, don't you? Is less than #0. 6 is greater than." Her words were sugar-coated poison, but her eyes told the real story. They were cold, calculating, victorious. She'd won, and she knew it. She had Derek. She had his baby. She had my house, my food, my money, and now she wanted my compliance in my own destruction. Living in my house. Eating my food. Sleeping in my bed with my husband. And now demanding I starve so she could stuff her face. What's with that look? Patricia Stratton, Derek's mother, said sharply from her self-appointed throne on my expensive leather couch, the one I'd saved for months to buy. She pointed one bony finger at me like I was something disgusting she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. "You should be grateful we're even keeping you around. You've been married 6 months and you still can't get pregnant. Clearly there's something wrong with you. So what's wrong with helping Lily take care of this baby? It's the least you can do. Derek, you really need to control your wife better. This attitude is completely unacceptable. She can't survive this new world without us, and she needs to remember that." I lowered my head, my tangled, unwashed hair falling forward to hide my face. And I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't even a bitter smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally made a decision. The smile of someone who had absolutely nothing left to lose. They thought I was afraid of death. They thought I was weak, broken, desperate to survive at any cost. They were wrong. Derek's father, Gerald Stratton, sat beside Patricia in his usual position, silent, complicit, watching me with undisguised disgust. He never said much, but he didn't need to. His contempt was written all over his face every time he looked at me. And then there was Marcus Morgan, Lily's younger brother. 23 years old, built like a linebacker, and apparently very enthusiastic about his role as the family enforcer. He'd taught me a lesson just hours earlier, his steel-toed boots leaving bruises that I knew would never have time to fade. Not that it mattered anymore. I endured Marcus's presence, his smug smirk, the way he cracked his knuckles meaningfully whenever I dared to look up. I lay perfectly still on the floor where they'd left me after the latest beating, my hands bound behind my back with rough rope that had rubbed my wrists raw. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd accepted my fate as their servant, their slave, their eventual food supply when the canned goods ran out. They celebrated their little family Derek with his arm around Lily's shoulders, Patricia cooing over the baby bump, Gerald nodding approvingly, Marcus standing guard like he was protecting something precious instead of guarding a hostage. I was waiting. Deep into the night, when everyone had fallen into careless, arrogant sleep, I made my move. The pain in my ribs was excruciating as I slowly, carefully sat up. They hadn't bothered to tie my legs, why would they? Is less than #0. 6 is greater than where could I possibly run to with the streets full of zombies. They'd been lazy with the rope around my wrists too. Overconfident. That would be their final mistake. I worked my jaw, testing. My teeth were still good and strong despite the split lip Marcus had given me. I bent nearly double, ignoring the screaming pain in my torso, and brought my bound wrists up to my mouth. It took 20 agonizing minutes of gnawing, but finally, the last strand broke. Freedom. I crept through the darkened rooms of the luxury 3-bedroom condo I had purchased with my lottery winnings. Past the Italian leather furniture I'd been so proud to buy. Past the 65-inch smart TV Derek had insisted we needed. Past the custom kitchen where Lily now cooked meals only for herself and her special family. Everything I'd worked for. Everything I'd dreamed of. Everything they'd stolen. I reached the front door and placed my hand on the lock. For just a moment, I hesitated. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to open this door and let the monsters in? Was I really going to murder 5 people, even if those 5 people had beaten me, starved me, stolen from me, and planned to eventually eat me? I thought about Lily's smirk, Derek's lies, Patricia's cruelty, Gerald's silent complicity, Marcus's violence. I thought about the baby Lily was carrying, Derek's baby, conceived while he was telling me he loved me, while he was planning our wedding, while he was spending my money on engagement rings and honeymoon deposits. I thought about how they'd tricked me into signing over my bank accounts for safekeeping during the crisis. How they'd convinced me to put Derek's name on the deed to this condo so we're both protected legally. How stupid, how pathetically stupid I'd been. My hand turned the lock. The deadbolt slid open with a soft click. I pulled the door open. The hallway beyond was dark, but I could hear them, the shambling footsteps, the wet breathing, the low moans of the undead. This high-rise luxury building had been overrun 3 days ago when the lobby security failed. The zombies had spread through the floors like a plague, and only the people who'd barricaded themselves into their units had survived. We'd survived because of my condo. My food. My planning. And now I was inviting death inside. "Hello," I whispered to the darkness. "Dinner's ready." The first zombie appeared in the doorway almost immediately. A woman who'd probably been a young professional before the outbreak, still wearing the tattered remains of a business suit. Her eyes were milky white, her skin gray and mottled, her mouth opening to reveal broken teeth. Behind her, I could see more. So many more. They poured into my home like a flood of rotting flesh and mindless hunger. The screams started immediately. Patricia's shriek was sharp and piercing, cutting through the air like a knife. Gerald. Derek. Oh God. Oh God. Derek's voice came next, high-pitched with panic in a way I'd never heard before. What the fuck? Close the door. Close the goddamn door! Marcus was shouting, his tough guy persona evaporating as he scrambled for anything to use as a weapon. Lily was sobbing, her hands wrapped protectively around her belly. The zombies didn't discriminate. They fell on whoever was closest. I stood in the open doorway and watched. The first zombie, the businesswoman, grabbed my arm. I didn't try to fight. What was the point? I felt her teeth sink into my forearm, tearing through skin and muscle. The pain was indescribable, like being burned and frozen at the same time. I could feel the infection entering my bloodstream immediately, hot and foreign and deadly. But even as my own blood spilled down my arm in thick rivulets, even as the virus began its work of shutting down my humanity, I smiled through the agony. Because Derek was screaming as 3 zombies tore into him. Because Patricia's shrieks had turned into wet gurgles. Because Marcus, for all his muscles and violence, was being ripped apart. Because Gerald had died without making a sound, just like he'd lived. Because Lily, beautiful, pregnant Lily, was begging for mercy that would never come. If I was going to die, they were coming with me. My vision was fading now, the infection working fast. I slumped against the doorframe and slid slowly to the floor. The sounds of carnage filled my ears, screaming, tearing, the wet sounds of feeding. The coppery smell of blood was overwhelming. The world dissolved into darkness and pain and cold. But in my last moments of consciousness, I felt something I hadn't felt in 6 months. Satisfaction. They'd taken everything from me, my money, my dignity, my future, my hope. They'd beaten me, starved me, humiliated me, and planned to eventually murder me. But I'd taken their lives. In the end, I'd won. Everything went black. The beginning, I gasped awake with a violent jerk, sitting bolt upright in bed, my heart hammering so hard against my ribs I thought it might burst through my chest. My hands flew to my forearm, searching desperately for the zombie bite, for the torn flesh, for the infection that should be killing me right now. Nothing. Clean, unmarked skin. Not even a scar. I stared at my arms in the dim morning light, turning them over and over, unable to process what I was seeing. My breathing came in short, sharp gasps. Sweat soaked through my pajamas and the sheets beneath me. For a long moment, I couldn't think, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at my unblemished arms while my brain tried desperately to make sense of the impossible. Slowly, like someone in a dream, I looked around. My tiny rental apartment. The same cramped studio I'd been living in for the past 2 years while I worked in the city. The crack in the ceiling shaped like a lightning bolt that I'd complained about to my landlord 6 times, with no results. The pile of clean laundry I'd been meaning to fold for 3 days, still sitting in the basket by the closet. The kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. The bathroom door that stuck and required a good shove to open. Everything exactly as I'd left it. Before the lottery. Before Derek's deception. Before the zombies. Before everything. My digital alarm clock sat on the nightstand, its blue numbers glowing softly 742 a.m. But it was the date displayed beneath the time that made my blood run cold. October 25th. 1 year before the apocalypse. 1 year before the dead rose and civilization collapsed. 1 year before my wedding to Derek. I'd died. I knew I'd died. I'd felt the zombie's teeth tearing through my flesh. I'd felt the virus burning through my bloodstream like acid. I'd felt my consciousness fading, my body shutting down, death creeping in from all sides. I'd died. And somehow, impossibly, I'd woken up 1 year in the past. Part 1 Preparation Chapter 1 Coming Home. My phone sat on the nightstand beside the clock, and something about it looked wrong. The screen was completely dark. I never turned my phone off at night. I used it as my backup alarm. Why would it be off? My hands were shaking as I reached for it and pressed the power button. The loading screen seemed to take an eternity. When it finally connected to the network, the phone started vibrating so violently it nearly jumped out of my hand. Text messages flooded in, one after another. Voicemails. Missed calls. The little red notification badges accumulating by the second. This was October 25th. This was the day after my lottery information had been leaked to the public. 2 weeks ago, in this timeline, I'd bought a lottery ticket on a whim. Just one ticket, $5. And I'd won $10 million. After taxes, just over $7 million. Until someone had maliciously exposed my identity, spinning a fabricated story about how I plan to donate everything to charity. Suddenly, every person I'd ever met had come crawling out with their hand out. My phone buzzed. Derek Stratton. Baby. Oh my God, I just heard. I'm so proud of you. Can I come over? We need to celebrate. In my original timeline, I'd thought that message was the sweetest thing ever. I'd melted at his sudden attention. This time, I pressed delete. Then I blocked his number entirely. I didn't need Derek Stratton. I didn't need his fake love or his manipulation or his lies. What I needed was to survive. The apocalypse was coming in exactly 1 year. But this time, I would be ready. This time, I would have supplies, weapons, a plan. And most importantly, I would have the only people I could actually trust. My family. I climbed out of bed and went to the kitchen. Despite everything, I was suddenly, overwhelmingly hungry. Not the desperate, gnawing hunger of starvation, this was different. This was my body telling me it needed fuel, combined with a psychological need so powerful it made my hands shake. I needed to prove to myself that the food was real. I pulled out the largest pot I owned and started cooking. 3 entire packages of ramen noodles. 4 eggs. A whole bag of frozen vegetables. 2 cups of shredded cheese. A can of chicken, green onions, sriracha sauce, everything I could find. When it was ready, I sat down with a fork and ate until my stomach hurt. Only then did I finally put the fork down, tears streaming down my face. The sensation of being truly, completely full was almost too much to bear. Never again would I starve. This time, I would be prepared. I wiped my tears and pulled my laptop over. I opened a new document and started typing. Not a grocery list, a survival list. But first, I had to go home. Not to this cramped apartment, but to my real home, where my parents still lived, where my older sister Jade had moved back to. I pulled up the train schedule. There was one leaving at 10:30 a.m. I could make it if I hurried. I packed quickly just the essentials. My laptop, important documents, clothes. Everything else could stay. This apartment, this life, I was leaving it all behind. As I headed downstairs with my suitcase, I peered cautiously out the entrance window. And there he was. Derek Stratton stood on the sidewalk, pacing while talking on his phone. I ducked back and headed for the back door instead. I pushed through the heavy metal door into the alley and started walking quickly toward the cross street. Just as I reached the end, I heard Derek's voice, surprisingly clear. "Lily, baby, you need to relax, okay? She won the lottery. $10 million. We just need to play this right, and the money's ours. You agreed to this plan from the start, remember?" I froze behind a dumpster. Even though I'd known what he was, hearing it made my blood boil. Of course I only love you. I've been stringing Vivienne along for years because her family owns that factory decent money. But $7 million after taxes? That's life-changing money. He paused, listening. I'm at her apartment now. She's not answering. She'll be vulnerable, scared. That's when I swoop in, be the supportive boyfriend, propose maybe in a few weeks. And if she doesn't fall for it? You already leaked her information, didn't you? If she won't cooperate, we'll destroy her reputation completely. So Lily had exposed my identity. Now I knew. Another call came through. Derek's tone changed sharp, annoyed. "Madison." Jesus Christ, how many times do I have to tell you? We broke up when we graduated. 4 years ago. Stop calling me. He hung up angrily. Madison Harper. Another classmate. 3 women. He was juggling 3 women. Derek headed toward my building. The moment he disappeared inside, I grabbed my suitcase and ran for the corner, flagging down a taxi. Is less than #0. 6 is greater than train station, I gasped. As fast as you can, please. As the taxi pulled away, I looked back one last time. Good riddance. I had exactly 1 year to prepare for the end of the world. Chapter 2. The Proof. The train ride gave me time to think. 4 hours watching the landscape while I processed the impossible. I'd died. The zombie bite, the virus, my body shutting down, it had been horrifyingly real. Yet here I sat on a commuter train, very much alive. How? Why? Maybe this was a hallucination. Maybe I was in a coma somewhere. But everything felt too real, too detailed, too mundane to be a dying fantasy. Which left me with one conclusion: I'd been given a second chance. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. Future Events Proof of Time Knowledge. This is a list of major events that will occur over the next year 1. October 28th, 3 days. The Danube River Bridge in Eastern Europe will collapse during its grand opening ceremony. The bridge, which cost over $200 million, will fail catastrophically due to design flaws and substandard materials. 17 people will die, including 3 government officials. 2. November 8th, 2 weeks, a magnitude 7. 8 earthquake will strike Mindanao, Philippines. Over 400 people will die. Thousands will be injured. 3. November 23rd, Marcus Chen, the action movie star, will die in a car accident on Pacific Coast Highway. Toxicology reports will show alcohol and prescription pills. I continued typing event after event. Each one was a tragedy I remembered from news reports in my previous life. When I finished, I moved on to survival planning. What went wrong in Timeline 1-1? I was with Derek and his family when the outbreak hit too. I had no supplies of my own 3. I was completely unprepared mentally and physically for. I was isolated from my real family. Advantages in Timeline 2-1. I know exactly when the apocalypse starts too. I have money, 7,000,003. I have family who loves me, 4. I have a full year to prepare, 5. I know how zombies behave, 6. I won't panic when it happens. The train pulled into my hometown station just after noon. The familiar sight made my throat tight. In my previous life, I'd never seen this place again after the outbreak. I died without knowing if my family survived. I grabbed my suitcase and called a taxi. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to my childhood home. The 2-story house with blue siding. The garden Mom tended obsessively. The tree Dad had planted when I was born. Home. I walked up to the front door. Before I could knock, it opened. Mom stood there, eyes widening. Vivienne? What are you? I dropped my suitcase and threw my arms around her, hugging her tightly. I missed you, I whispered. I missed you so much. Mom hugged me back, confused but warm. Honey, you saw us 2 months ago. Are you okay? Is less than #0. 6 is greater than. Is this about the lottery? I'm fine. Better than fine. We need to talk. All of us. It's important. 10 minutes later, we sat in the living room. Mom had made tea. Dad sat in his armchair, looking at me with intense focus. Okay, Viv, he said. What's going on? I took a deep breath. This was it. 1 year from today, a zombie apocalypse is going to begin. The dead will rise and attack the living. Civilization will collapse. Millions will die. Silence. Mom set down her teacup. Dad's expression showed concern. I know how it sounds, but I'm telling the truth. I've lived through it. I died. Somehow, I woke up this morning a year in the past with memories of everything that's going to happen. Vivienne. Mom's voice was gentle. Honey, have you been sleeping? Has the stress? I knew you wouldn't believe me. That's why I made this. I pulled out my laptop and handed it to Dad. This is a list of major events that will happen over the next year. Exact dates, details, outcomes. The first one happens in 3 days. A bridge collapse in Eastern Europe. 17 dead. Dad read through the list, frown deepening. Mom leaned over to read. These are very specific, Dad said finally. If someone was making this up, I'm not making it up. In 3 days, you'll see. The bridge will collapse. And when you see I'm right, you'll know I'm telling the truth about the zombies too. And if you're wrong, Mom asked softly. If I'm wrong, I'll get professional help. I'll see anyone you want. But if I'm right, I looked between them. If I'm right, we have 1 year to prepare to survive the end of the world. And I need your help. Dad closed the laptop slowly. He looked at Mom. They had one of those wordless conversations only long married couples could have. Finally, Dad spoke. 3 days. We'll wait 3 days and see if this bridge collapses. But Vivienne, you need to call your sister. She needs to be part of this. Relief flooded through me. They weren't throwing me out. They were willing to wait and see. Already done. I texted Jade from the train. She's coming home tomorrow morning. Mom squeezed my hand. Whatever's happening, we love you. We're going to figure this out. 3 days. In 3 days, the bridge would collapse. In 3 days, they would believe me. And then we'd have 1 year to prepare for the end of the world. Chapter 3. Belief. Jade arrived the next morning, bursting through the door at 8 a.m. Okay, I'm here. What's the emergency? I grabbed her in a hug. Jade was 29, 3 years older than me, with the same brown hair but styled in a trendy, asymmetrical cut. She wore thick framed glasses and had a personality that filled any room. I'd missed her so much. I'm fine. Better than fine. Just wait. Tomorrow everything will make sense. Jade studied my face with narrowed eyes. You're being weird. Mom and Dad are being weird too. What's going on? Tomorrow, October 28th. That's when you'll understand. That afternoon, I walked Jade through everything. She listened with increasing alarm. Viv, I don't think you're crazy, but this zombie stuff, this time travel, that's not possible. Tomorrow. Just wait until tomorrow. October 28th dawned cool and overcast. I woke early, too anxious to sleep. This was it. Either my family would believe me, or I'd have to accept I'd had some kind of breakdown. At breakfast, nobody mentioned the bridge. But the tension was there. Around 10 a.m., Dad turned on the TV to the news channel. We all gathered in the living room and waited. The minutes crawled by. 11 a.m. passed. Then noon. I could feel my family's eyes on me. Worried. Increasingly convinced I needed help. Maybe I did. Maybe this whole thing was, we're interrupting our regular programming with breaking news out of Eastern Europe, the news anchor said suddenly. We're receiving reports of a catastrophic bridge collapse. The room went completely silent. The TV showed shaky cell phone footage, a massive suspension bridge decorated with banners. A crowd gathered for an opening ceremony. And then, in horrifying slow motion, the bridge began to collapse. The Danube River Bridge, which cost over $200 million, has collapsed during its grand opening ceremony. Early reports suggest structural failure. We're hearing reports of multiple casualties. 17 dead, I whispered. 3 government officials among them. The anchor continued. We're now hearing confirmation of at least 17 deaths, including 3 government officials. Dad's face had gone pale. Mom's hand was pressed to her mouth. Jade was staring at the TV with wide, shocked eyes. This will become an international scandal, I said quietly. There will be investigations. They'll find substandard materials were used and inspectors were bribed. 6 people will be arrested. We watched for another hour. Every detail matched what I'd predicted. Finally, Dad picked up the remote and muted the TV. "The Philippines earthquake," he said, voice strained. "November 8th. Yes. And the celebrity death. Marcus Chen. November 23rd. Yes. And all the rest. All of it will happen exactly as I described. And on October 25th next year, the zombie apocalypse will begin." Mom was crying quietly. Jade sat frozen. Dad set down the remote carefully and looked at me. "Okay," he said. "I believe you." Chapter 4 Planning. Over the next few days, my predictions continued to come true. The earthquake in the Philippines. The cyber attack on the European bank. Every single event, exactly as I'd described. My family no longer doubted. Now, we had to plan. We gathered around the dining table, documents and maps spread out before us. "We need to find a place to hide," Dad said. "Somewhere we can survive for months, maybe years." "Underground," I said. "That's safest. Above ground, zombies will find you eventually. Underground, we can hide and wait it out." "We have 2 options," Dad continued. "The old farmhouse in the countryside has a basement. But neighbors would notice us preparing. Or we buy a house nearby with a basement and fortify it," Mom suggested. "Not the countryside," I said firmly. "Too many neighbors. We need somewhere isolated but close enough that we can prep without suspicion." We spent hours looking at real estate listings. Finally, we founded a suburban villa development called Rivergate Estates. The location was awkward near a highway with train noise in the distance. Wealthy people avoided it, but it was too expensive for most regular folks. Perfect. "Look at this," I pointed at the map. High walls around the entire community. 2 sides bordered by a river. Low population density. In the apocalypse, zombies follow living people. Fewer people means fewer zombies. "It's like a fortress," Jade said, studying the layout. We drove out to look at it. The development was half empty, many houses unfinished or abandoned. We went to the sales office. "Not every house has a basement," the realtor explained. "We only have 1 property left with basement space." Dad checked the location and shook his head. "Too central. Neighbors on all sides. Too risky." But he still told Mom and me to start buying supplies. "Start with non-perishables," Mom said. "Clothes, toilet paper, soap, feminine products. Buy hundreds of everything. Food can come later." A few days later, Dad announced he'd secured a house. I called in some favors. Bought it from someone who knew someone. Its perfect corner location backs up to the river and a hillside. And get this, it has 2 underground levels. We all stared at him. "The previous owner's rich kid renovated it," Dad explained. "Built it like a private nightclub underground. Spent a fortune, then got fined by the HOA for unauthorized construction and couldn't sell it. Their loss, our gain." We rushed to see it. The property was incredible. Above ground, 2 stories with decent but simple finishing. Below ground, 2 full levels with complete ventilation systems and soundproofing. This is perfect, I breathed. We could live down here for years if we had to. The entrance is too obvious, though, Dad noted. We'll need to hide it. Over the next 4 months, we worked on renovations. The entrance was relocated behind a staircase, hidden behind a custom metal bookshelf that locked from the inside. Mom designed a clever latch system that secured it in place. Look at this, Mom showed us proudly. The pool outside isn't just decorative, it's connected to underground pipes. We'll have water access. And your dad connected the drainage system so we can collect rainwater too. We installed pin cameras everywhere, all feeding to monitors downstairs, Dad added. Plus, solar panels on the roof, not too many, don't want to attract attention. And I put 2 micro-hydroelectric generators upstream on the river. As long as we're careful with power, we'll have electricity indefinitely. The whole family worked together. Jade and I scoured wholesale markets, buying supplies in bulk. We claimed we were young entrepreneurs starting various businesses. We bought hundreds of sets of clothing for all seasons, cases of toilet paper, soap, toothpaste, feminine products, dozens of batteries, flashlights, portable stoves, fire extinguishers, gas masks, emergency tools, water purification systems, collapsible buckets, first aid supplies, medications bought fresh, closer to the apocalypse date, seeds for growing vegetables and mushrooms, chickens and rabbits for fresh meat. Their reproduction would sustain us. As the months passed, we stockpiled food, 500 pounds of rice and flour in vacuum-sealed packages, hundreds of cans of fruit and meat, the meat from our own factory, compressed crackers, military rations, instant noodles, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, spices, fresh meat and vegetables in 4 large freezers. We filled the underground levels methodically, Mom organizing everything with military precision. 6 months before the apocalypse, we began moving everything from our warehouse to the house. Jade drove a rented truck with XX renovation decals plastered all over it, bright and obvious, hiding in plain sight. During this time, Derek kept trying to contact me. He reached out through college friends, social media, everywhere. I ignored it all. But I did have one piece of unfinished business. I hated Derek. And he wouldn't leave me alone. So I decided to do something about it. I created an anonymous account and tracked down Madison Harper, the 3rd woman Derek had been stringing along. I found photos Derek had posted with Lily, showing them very cozy together. I sent everything to Madison, along with a message, "Thought you should know." Also, count the months she's probably pregnant. Then I deleted the account and walked away. A few weeks later, Derek's whole scheme exploded. Madison confronted him publicly. Lily and Derek's relationship became public. The story went viral. Man juggles 3 girlfriends, tries to scam lottery winner. Derek was humiliated. His reputation destroyed. The viral videos and articles followed him everywhere. My family and I watched the drama unfold with satisfaction. Justice served cold. Meanwhile, we continued our preparations. 2 months before the apocalypse, Dad closed down the factory. "I'm getting older. Health isn't what it used to be," he announced to the employees. "We're going abroad for extended medical treatment." He distributed the remaining inventory as bonuses to the loyal workers who'd been with us for years. For a few special families who'd been like extended family to us, He gave extra supplies with the excuse of farewell gifts. "We can't save everyone," Dad said quietly when I asked. "But we can help the people who've helped us." His brother, my uncle, tried to take advantage, demanding free supplies without paying. Dad sold to him at cost, nothing more. Why sell to him at all? I asked bitterly, remembering how Uncle had nearly bankrupted Dad years ago. Mom just smiled. "Self-inflicted disasters are the worst kind," she said mysteriously. The last 5 days before the apocalypse, we moved into the underground shelter permanently. We tested all systems, organized our supplies one final time, and said goodbye to the world above. On October 24th, we had one last celebration above ground. We ordered takeout, watched movies, enjoyed the comforts of civilization one final time. On October 25th, we sealed ourselves in. And we waited for the end of the world. Part 2, The Outbreak, Chapter 5, Day 0. We sat in the underground shelter, watching multiple monitors showing news feeds from around the world. The date on the screen, October 25th. The time, 2:47 p.m. This was it. Any moment now. "Are you sure about the time?" Jade asked nervously. "It happened around 3 p.m. in my timeline," I said. "It started in Asia first, then spread west as the day progressed." Mom gripped Dad's hand tightly. We all stared at the screens. At exactly 2:53 p.m., the first reports came in. Breaking news from Tokyo, reports of violent attacks in the Shibuya district. Unconfirmed reports from Seoul of people attacking others. Shanghai authorities responding to mass casualty incidents. The news anchors looked confused, trying to make sense of scattered reports. But I knew what was happening. The dead were rising. Within 20 minutes, social media exploded. Shaky phone videos showed people stumbling with jerky movements, attacking others with their teeth. News networks struggled to keep up with the flood of information. Zombies started trending worldwide. One video showed a busy Tokyo street. A businessman in a suit stumbled into traffic. A car hit him should have been fatal. But he got back up, bones clearly broken, and lunged at a woman who'd stopped to help. "Oh my God," Mom whispered. By 4 p.m., the outbreak had reached Europe. By 5 p.m., the East Coast of America. By 6 p.m., it was nationwide. The president appeared on TV, looking haggard. "I'm declaring a national state of emergency." The CDC is coordinating with military and local authorities. Everyone must shelter in place. But it was already too late. The outbreak was everywhere, simultaneously. Hospitals were overwhelmed within hours. Emergency services collapsed. The power grid started failing in major cities as operators abandoned their posts or died. We watched civilization crumble on our screens. The 4 of us sat in our underground shelter, safe and dry and well-fed, watching the world end above our heads. "All those people," Jade whispered. "All those people dying." "We couldn't save them," Dad said firmly. "We could barely save ourselves. Don't feel guilty for surviving." "He's right," I added. "In my previous life, I tried to help. I trusted the wrong people. I ended up beaten and starved and dead. This time, we survive first. Maybe later, when things stabilize, we can help others." But not now. By midnight, most TV stations had gone offline. The few remaining emergency broadcasts urged people to seek government safe zones. We watched as crowds of refugees tried to flee cities, only to be overwhelmed by zombie hordes on the highways. It was exactly as I remembered. Exactly as horrible. We turned off the monitors eventually. There was nothing more to see. The world above was lost. We were safe below. For now. Chapter 6. The Neighbors. 3 days after the outbreak, we heard noises above us. Someone was in the house. We froze, watching our security monitors. 2 young men, maybe mid-20s, were moving through the rooms above. They moved cautiously, carrying makeshift weapons, a baseball bat, and a kitchen knife. They must have broken in looking for shelter, Dad whispered. We watched them explore. They found our renovated pool, our deliberately messy upper floors. We'd left them looking half-finished to discourage squatters. They seemed confused, but decided to stay. Over the next few days, we learned their names from their conversations: Carson and Blake Reed. Brothers. They'd been separated from a larger group of survivors and had stumbled into our community looking for safety. There's a big group holed up in the community center. Carson, the older brother, explained during one of their conversations we overheard. Tour group that got stuck here when the outbreak started. They've taken over, got all the supplies. Me and Blake, we're at the bottom of the pecking order. Barely getting any food. They were using our house without knowing we were right below them. We had to be incredibly careful. No cooking during the day. No loud noises. We moved like ghosts in our own shelter. It was nerve-wracking, but manageable. Until Vivienne Chen showed up. It was the middle of the night, 3 weeks into the apocalypse, when someone started pounding on the door upstairs. Carson and Blake grabbed their weapons, clearly terrified. Carson. Blake. Open up. It's Elena. They cautiously let her in. Elena was a young woman, maybe 25, drenched from the rain outside. Thank God you're alive, she gasped. I need to tell you something. You need to get out of here. Now. We listened carefully to every word. The community center group. They're eating people. Even through the monitor, we could see Carson and Blake's shock. What? My aunt works in their kitchen area. She overheard them talking. They're running out of food. So they started. They started with the sick ones first. Then anyone who caused trouble. They're calling it dealing with troublemakers, but my aunt saw them preparing. Preparing. Elena couldn't finish the sentence. Oh my God, Blake whispered. My aunt told me to run. Find you two. She said you're the only ones she can trust. We need to escape before they decide we're next. The 3 of them spent hours planning their escape. They gathered what little food they could find. Blake had been secretly hoarding some of his meager rations. Elena's aunt promised to create a distraction. The next night, they left. We watched them go on our exterior cameras, disappearing into the rainy darkness. Do you think they'll make it? Mom asked quietly. I hope so, I said. They seemed smart. Cautious. They have a chance. With them gone, we relaxed slightly. No more worrying about noise. But the revelation about cannibalism at the community center was chilling. In my previous life, I'd never known the details of what happened above ground. Now I knew humans could be just as dangerous as zombies. Maybe more dangerous. Chapter 7: The Collapse. Over the next few weeks, we heard occasional noises from the community center. Shouting. Sometimes screaming. We couldn't see that far with our cameras, but we could hear enough to piece together what was happening. The survivors were turning on each other. Resources were running out. Leadership was fragmenting. The tour group members who'd initially taken charge were fighting with the original residents. Violence was escalating. We stayed hidden in our shelter, monitoring the radio broadcasts. The government had established several safe zones around the country. Rescue operations were underway, but progress was slow. They were triaging, focusing on areas with the highest concentrations of survivors. Our suburban community was low priority. 2 months after the outbreak, in the middle of the night, we heard it. A sound like thunder. Like a stampede. Like the end of the world. The zombie horde had arrived. We watched on our exterior cameras as thousands, tens of thousands of zombies flooded into our community. They must have been drawn by the noise and activity from the survivor groups. The zombies overwhelmed everything in their path. We heard screaming from the community center. Gunshots. Explosions someone must have had grenades or homemade bombs. But it wasn't enough. By dawn, the screaming had stopped. The zombies wandered through our community, breaking into houses, tearing apart anything they found. We watched in horror as our house's upper floors were destroyed. Walls were smashed. Windows broken. Furniture torn apart. But the zombies couldn't find us. The hidden entrance held. The metal bookshelf stayed locked. The zombies shambled around directly above our heads, and we held our breath, not making a sound. Eventually, they moved on. When we finally dared to check our cameras again, the community was devastated. Not a single building remained intact. Everything above ground was rubble. The monitoring equipment is destroyed, Dad reported. Some cameras are still working, but most are gone. We were truly cut off now. No windows to the outside world. Just 4 people in an underground bunker, surrounded by devastation. 3 days later, we heard helicopters. Rescue teams. They flew over the area, using loudspeakers to call for survivors. But there were no survivors to answer. The zombies had killed everyone. "We're 3 days too late," we heard one of the rescue team members say over their radio, which we picked up on our emergency frequency. No signs of life. Recommend marking this zone as cleared of civilians and moving to the next sector. 3 days. If the Reed brothers and Elena had stayed, if they'd held on just 3 more days, they might have been rescued. We'd never know if they made it to safety or not. All we knew was that we were alone now. Truly alone. Chapter 8. The long wait months passed in the underground shelter. Without exterior cameras, we relied on our handful of still-functioning pinhole cameras and the radio for information. The radio became our lifeline to the outside world. The news was mixed. Some safe zones were thriving. Others had fallen. The government was slowly, methodically clearing zombies from key areas. But it was taking much longer than anyone had hoped. Worse, the zombies were evolving. Reports indicate zombies are displaying increased intelligence, one broadcast announced. They appear to be hunting in coordinated groups. Some have been observed using basic tools. All survivors are urged to exercise extreme caution. They're getting smarter, I said grimly. In my previous timeline, I heard about this but never saw it myself. They eventually develop basic reasoning skills. Not human intelligence, but enough to be more dangerous. How much smarter? Jade asked nervously. Smart enough to open doors. Smart enough to work together. Smart enough to set crude ambushes. That was terrifying. We fell into routines. We slept in shifts, always having someone monitoring the radio and the few remaining cameras. We exercised daily in our limited space to stay healthy. We rotated through our food supplies carefully, eating the oldest items first to prevent spoilage. Mom kept meticulous records in a notebook, what we ate each day, how much water we used, our health status, everything. Dad maintained our power systems, checking the batteries and connections daily. Jade and I took turns cooking when we could cook sometimes. We were forced to eat cold meals if we were worried about noise. We played cards. We read books. We told stories. We did anything to stay sane in our underground prison. One day, about 8 months after the outbreak, we lost our water supply. A zombie had fallen into our pool reservoir above ground. We saw it thrashing on our one remaining working camera pointed that direction. The water's contaminated now, Dad said grimly. We can't use it. We have the rainwater collection system, Mom reminded him. And we still have about 60 barrels of stored water. We'll be okay if we're very careful. We went on strict water rationing. Sponge baths only. Minimal cooking. Every drop counted. It was miserable, but we survived. Around the 1-year mark, the radio brought incredible news. A vaccine has been successfully developed and tested, the broadcaster announced. Repeat, a zombie virus vaccine exists and is being mass-produced. Additionally, scientists have developed a chemical agent that neutralizes zombie mobility. Field tests have been overwhelmingly successful. We all stopped what we were doing and gathered around the radio. The agent, designated Z0, causes rapid deterioration of zombie muscle tissue. Affected zombies lose mobility within minutes and fully decompose within hours. Production is being ramped up. All safe zones will receive supplies for coordinated strikes against zombie populations. They did it, Jade breathed. They actually did it. This doesn't mean it's over, Dad cautioned. But it means humanity has a fighting chance. He was right. Over the next few months, we heard about systematic zombie elimination campaigns. Safe zones coordinating attacks. Large areas being cleared and secured. It was slow work. There were millions of zombies worldwide. But progress was being made. One day, 18 months after the outbreak, we heard a sound we'd never expected to hear again. Someone knocking on our entrance. We froze, staring at each other in terror. Hello? A male voice called out. This is Corporal Hayes with the U. It's 1. Army Zombie Elimination Squad. We're conducting sweeps for survivors. Is anyone down there? We remained silent. Was this real? Or a trap? I know you're scared, the voice continued. But we have detection equipment. We know there are life signs below this rubble. The area has been cleared of zombies. You're safe now. Still, we hesitated. Then we heard another sound. Multiple sounds. Boots on rubble. More voices. Sarge, I'm showing 4 heat signatures below. Must be a shelter. How'd they survive this long? However they did it, they're tough as nails. Finally, Dad made the decision. He climbed up to the entrance and unlocked it from the inside. Blinding sunlight poured into our shelter. After 18 months in artificial light, it was almost painful. A young soldier in green camo peered down at us, his face breaking into a huge smile. Holy shit! There really are people down here. More soldiers appeared. They helped us out carefully. We were weak from months of limited movement and poor nutrition despite our stockpiled food. As I climbed out into the daylight, I started crying. I couldn't help it. We'd survived. We'd actually survived. The world above was devastation. Our beautiful villa was gone, reduced to broken walls and rubble. The entire community was destroyed. But we were alive. You folks are incredibly lucky, Corporal Hayes said. Most people who tried to hide didn't make it. Zombies found them, or they ran out of supplies, or, well, a lot of things went wrong for a lot of people. But you're alive. That's what matters. He wasn't wrong. We'd lost our home. We'd lost our community. We'd lost the world we'd known. But we had each other. Our family was intact. And that was everything. Part 3, Reconstruction, Chapter 9. Sunlight and Ash. The rescue team took us to a temporary camp set up about 10 miles away. It was a sprawling tent city filled with other survivors, people who'd hidden in basements, attics, bunkers. People who'd somehow, miraculously, lived through the worst catastrophe in human history. We were examined by doctors, given fresh clothes, real food. After 18 months of recycled air and artificial light, everything felt overwhelming. The sun was too bright. The wind was too strong. The noise of people talking and moving around was almost unbearable after so long in silent hiding. You're going to experience some adjustment challenges, the doctor told us. Your bodies got used to minimal activity and dim light. Take it slow. Don't push yourselves. But even as she spoke, I could see people around the camp working. Organizing supplies. Building more permanent structures. Nobody was taking it slow because nobody could afford to. The government is coordinating reconstruction efforts, a camp administrator explained during our orientation. We're focusing on establishing stable settlements, restoring infrastructure, and eliminating remaining zombie populations. We need everyone who's able to contribute. She looked at us hopefully. What skills do you folks have? I ran a canning factory, Dad said. I know manufacturing, logistics, quality control. I was in marketing, Jade offered. Communications, planning, coordination. I have a business degree, I added. I can do administrative work, accounting, whatever you need. And I can cook for hundreds, Mom said. I also have nursing training. The administrator's face lit up. You're all hired. Report to your assigned areas tomorrow morning. So we joined the reconstruction effort. Dad went to work on food production and distribution systems. Jade helped organize work crews and coordinate between different departments. I ended up in supply management, tracking inventory and distribution. Mom worked in the medical tent, caring for sick and injured survivors. The work was exhausting, but purposeful. For the first time in 18 months, we had a routine that didn't involve hiding or rationing or watching cameras for zombies. We had a future. The zombie elimination campaigns continued. Military squads using the Z-Null agent were systematically clearing areas. We'd hear reports on the radio, Sector 7 cleared. Sector 12 cleared. Sector 18 cleared. Slowly, inexorably, humanity was taking back the world. 3 months after our rescue, the camp administrator called a meeting. "I have an announcement," she said, looking tired but satisfied. "As of yesterday, our region has been declared zombie-free. The military has completed final sweeps. There are no more active zombie threats within 200 miles of this location." The crowd erupted in cheers. People were crying, hugging, celebrating. "This doesn't mean we're done," the administrator continued. "Is less than #0. 6# is greater than we still have years of reconstruction ahead. But the immediate threat is over. We've survived." That night, the camp held a celebration. Someone had found a working radio and old recordings of music. People danced. Children played children who'd been born during the apocalypse, who'd never known a world without zombies, were finally able to just be kids. My family sat together, watching the celebration. "I never thought I'd see this," Mom said quietly. "When we were down in that shelter, month after month, I thought we'd die there." "We almost did," Dad admitted. "If the rescue team had been 1 month later, we would have run out of water completely." "But we didn't," Jade said firmly. "We made it. All of us." I looked at my family, my parents, my sister, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. In my first life, I died alone, not knowing their fate. In this life, we'd survived together. "I love you guys," I said, my voice cracking. "I love you so much." We sat together under the stars, real stars, not the ones I'd imagined during those long months underground, and for the first time in 18 months, I felt truly at peace. Chapter 10: The New World. 6 months after the camp was established, the government announced the beginning of Phase 2 of reconstruction rebuilding permanent settlements. Our region was chosen as one of the pilot sites for a new planned community. Engineers and architects worked with survivors to design a sustainable town that could support several thousand people. "We're not just rebuilding what was," one of the planners explained. "We're building something better. Something that learned from what happened." The new town would have reinforced community shelters every few blocks, emergency supplies cached throughout the town, a strong wall around the perimeter just in case, sustainable food production, vertical farms, greenhouses, solar and wind power, water purification systems. It sounded like a dream. "The government is offering land grants to survivors who want to stay and help build," the camp administrator announced. "Prime locations for people who've proven themselves during the reconstruction effort." My family looked at each other. "We should do it," I said. "We already lost our home. Might as well build a new one." "Agreed," Dad said. "Besides, I'm too old to start over somewhere else. You're not old, Mom protested. I'm 59. That's old enough. We applied for a land grant and were approved. We chose a plot on the edge of the new town, near where a park was planned. After 18 months underground, I want trees, Mom said firmly. Lots of trees. Building began immediately. The entire community worked together, people who'd been strangers 3 months ago, now collaborating like old friends. We'd all survived the same nightmare. We'd all lost people. We'd all been forced to make impossible choices. That shared trauma created bonds stronger than most friendships. Our new house was modest, nothing like the villa we'd lost. But it was ours, built with our own hands, and it had something the villa never had: windows that looked out on a world full of hope instead of zombies. 1 year after our rescue, on the 2nd anniversary of the apocalypse, the government held a memorial service. Today we remember the billions who didn't survive, the president said in a televised address. We remember parents, children, friends, neighbors. We remember a world that ended. And we commit ourselves to building a new world, a better world in their memory. Around the world, people observed a moment of silence. I thought about Derek, about Patricia and Gerald and Marcus and Lily, about their baby who'd never been born. They'd been terrible people who'd done terrible things to me, but they'd also been human beings who'd died screaming. I couldn't forgive them, but I could acknowledge their deaths as part of the larger tragedy. After the memorial, life continued. The new town grew rapidly. Farms were established. Factories reopened. Schools were built for the children. Slowly, incredibly, something resembling normal life returned. Dad and some other survivors restarted his canning factory, using new equipment and methods. Mom worked at the new hospital. Jade became Deputy Director of Community Planning. I managed supply chains for the entire region. We were busy, productive, useful. We were alive. 2 years after the apocalypse, a message appeared on community message boards looking for information about survivors from Rivergate Estates community. Specifically, Carson and Blake Reed, and Elena Chen. If you have any information, please contact. I stared at the message for a long time, remembering those 3 young people who'd lived above our shelter, who'd escaped into the night. I had no information to give. I'd never know if they survived. But I hoped they had. I hoped they were somewhere safe, building new lives, just like we were. 3 years after the apocalypse, the president made another announcement. The World Health Organization has officially declared the zombie virus eradicated. While we remain vigilant, and while reconstruction efforts continue, the immediate crisis is over. Humanity has survived. We have reclaimed our world. The celebration was global. Fireworks lit up skies around the world. People danced in streets. The nightmare was truly, finally over. That night, my family gathered for dinner, a real dinner, with fresh vegetables from our garden, bread from the local bakery, and even meat from the recently reopened livestock farms. Remember our first night in the shelter? Jade asked. How terrified we were. Remember the ramen? I laughed. We ate so much ramen. Remember when the water supply got contaminated? Dad added. That was rough. Remember when we heard the rescue team and didn't know if we should answer? Mom shook her head. I think that was the scariest moment of all. We reminisced about our time underground 18 months that had felt like a lifetime. 18 months of fear and uncertainty and hope. I wouldn't want to do it again, I said. But I'm glad we did it together. To family, Dad raised his glass. To survival. To second chances. To second chances, we all echoed. As I clinked glasses with my family, I thought about my previous life. About dying on that floor, opening the door for the zombies, ending my life in revenge and despair. This time was so much better. This time, I'd saved the people I loved. This time, I'd survived. Part Foreclosure Chapter 11. 5 years later, 5 years after the apocalypse, the world looked almost normal again. Not the same. It would never be the same. The population was a fraction of what it had been. Entire cities remained as ruins, too expensive to rebuild. Huge swaths of land were still contaminated and dangerous. But humanity had adapted. We always do. The town we'd helped build had grown into a small city of 50,000 people. It had schools, hospitals, factories, farms. It had a library and a movie theater and restaurants. It had a future. I'd gotten married the previous year to Michael, an engineer I'd met during reconstruction efforts. He'd lost his entire family in the outbreak, parents, siblings, everyone. He understood grief and survival in a way few people could. We had a small apartment in the new city center, and we were talking about starting a family. The idea terrified me, bringing a child into a world that had so recently almost ended, but it also filled me with hope. Life, continuing. Life, defying the darkness. Jade had become the city's director of urban planning. She'd married too, to Sarah, a doctor she'd met at the hospital where Mom worked. They were expecting their first child through surrogacy, and the whole family was excited. Mom and Dad had retired from their reconstruction work and now spent most of their time in their garden. They'd built a beautiful little house with a yard that was almost embarrassingly full of plants. After 18 months underground, I never want to be without green growing things again, Mom had explained. One evening, my family gathered for dinner at my parents' house. It had become a weekly tradition, Sunday dinners, where we all came together, no matter how busy we were. As we ate, Dad asked, "Viv, do you ever think about Derek? About what happened in your first life?" I considered the question. Did I think about him? Sometimes, I admitted. Not as much as I used to. Mostly, I wonder what happened to him in this timeline. If he's even still alive. Do you want to know? Jade asked. Is less than #0. 6# is greater than not really, I said honestly. He doesn't matter anymore. He's not part of my life, and that's how I want it to stay. Good, Mom said firmly. That man didn't deserve you. Never did. We finished dinner and moved to the living room. The evening was warm, windows open, breeze flowing through. You know what I realized the other day? Jade said. We never would have survived if Vivienne hadn't had her experience. Her memories from before. That's true, Dad acknowledged. Without knowing what was coming, we would have been caught completely off guard like everyone else. So in a weird way, Jade continued, Derek kind of saved us. If he hadn't been such a complete bastard in that first timeline, Vivienne wouldn't have been desperate enough to open that door. She wouldn't have died. She wouldn't have come back with her memories. We wouldn't have prepared. I'd never thought about it that way. I guess that's true, I said slowly. Although I'd phrase it differently, Derek's betrayal taught me who to trust and who not to trust. It taught me that family matters most. Those lessons saved us. Here's to lessons learned the hard way. Michael raised his glass. We all drank to that. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Michael and I walked back to our apartment through the quiet streets of our city. The streetlights were solar-powered, still a bit dim, but sufficient. People sat on porches, enjoying the evening air. Children played in yards. Teenagers hung out at the corner store. Normal. Beautifully, mundanely normal. Do you ever wish you could go back? Michael asked. Warn more people? Save more lives? I thought about it. Every day. Every single day I think about all the people who died. But I also know I did the best I could. I saved my family. That's all I could have hoped for. You're a good person, Vivienne. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. Not as much as you think. We reached our building and climbed the stairs to our apartment. It was small, but comfortable. Home. As I got ready for bed, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was 31 now, 5 years older than when I'd had my second chance. I had laugh lines starting at the corners of my eyes. A few gray hairs. A scar on my shoulder from an accident during reconstruction work. I looked older. More tired. But also stronger. Happier. I'd survived 2 lifetimes. I'd seen the worst humanity had to offer, and the best. I'd experienced betrayal and love, despair and hope, death and rebirth. And through it all, I'd had my family. That's what mattered. That's what would always matter. Epilogue 10 years later, 10 years after the apocalypse, the world celebrated the first Recovery Day, a global holiday commemorating humanity's survival and renewal. By then, the pre-apocalypse world was something children only learned about in history books. The generation born after the outbreak would never remember a world without walls and emergency shelters and memorial sites. But they would also never remember a world full of zombies and death and fear. That was a gift. My daughter Emma was 6 years old, born 4 years after the apocalypse. She was smart and funny and fearless, everything I'd hoped she'd be. She loved dinosaurs and chocolate ice cream and her Aunt Jade's dramatic storytelling. My son Lucas was 3, a tiny ball of chaos who kept Michael and me constantly exhausted and constantly laughing. They would never know the terror we'd lived through. We'd made sure of that. On Recovery Day, the entire city gathered in the Central Park for a memorial service and celebration. The mayor, a survivor who'd been pulled from the rubble of her collapsed building after 3 weeks of hiding, gave a speech about resilience and hope. 10 years ago, we faced extinction, she said. Today, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. We've rebuilt our communities. We've created new traditions. We've found ways to honor those we lost while celebrating those who remain. We are the generation that refused to give up. And our children will be the generation that never has to fight the way we did. The crowd applauded. Emma tugged on my hand. Mommy, why are people crying? They're remembering people they loved who aren't here anymore, sweetie. Like Grandma Joan and Grandpa Mark? She meant Michael's parents, whom she'd never met. Yes, like them. I wish I could have met them. Me too, baby. Me too. After the ceremony, the celebration began. Music played. Food vendors sold treats. Children ran and played. It felt like a festival, like a county fair, like normal life. Mom and Dad sat on a bench, watching their grandchildren play. They were in their late 60s now, graying and moving a bit slower, but still healthy and sharp. Can you believe it's been 10 years? Mom asked. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, Dad replied. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Both, I said, sitting down beside them. It feels like both. We watched Emma and Lucas play with Jade and Sarah's 2 children, twin boys, 7 years old, who were absolutely wild and absolutely loved. We did good, Jade said, settling onto the grass beside the bench. All of us. We survived. We rebuilt. We created this. She gestured at the park, the families, the city beyond. We did, I agreed. As the sun set on Recovery Day, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I thought about my 2 lives. The first one that had ended in darkness and despair. The second one that had given me everything. I'd been given an impossible gift, a second chance. And I'd used it to save the people I loved, to build a life worth living, to create a future worth fighting for. I'd survived the end of the world. And in surviving, I'd found something better than revenge, better than justice, better than anything I'd imagined when I'd opened that door and invited death inside. I'd found peace. The end.